is making digital services more accessible and more accessible for citizens, specifically because we have so many languages. So it is making life easier for people speaking multiple languages and and getting enhanced public service delivery. Across Asia, open digital platforms are helping farmers receive better crop advisories, supporting health system with faster disease tracking, and so on. The list can go on. So for a common man, ideally, this means just simpler access to public services, not tied to one vendor, one nation, and something which is a shared solution that can be used across. So we have an amazing panel of experts, and let me quickly in 2 minutes share more about the panelists. You can catch hold of them after the event if you have questions, but there is going to be a short question and answer session, so please keep your questions ready towards the end of the panel. So Pradeep Gupta, he's a Vice President, Industry Solutions and Architecture, NVIDIA, and he brings a deep systems perspective from NVIDIA, working at the intersection of compute infrastructure, AI acceleration, and large-scale deployment. His work focuses on how advanced AI architectures can move from research environments to real-world industry and public sector systems. Tanvi Lal is the Director of Strategy, People plus AI. Tanvi works at the heart of human-centered AI, helping organizations design AI systems that are not just technically robust, but socially aligned. Her work bridges policy, design, and responsible AI deployment. Vineet Singh, he's a CTO, Digital Green Foundation, and leads technology, which has scaled digital solutions for millions of farmers across India and the Global South. His work demonstrates how open platforms can directly impact agriculture, livelihoods, and rural ecosystems. Shravant Aluru is the CEO of Avatar AI. He works on generative AI and immersive technologies. He brings a startup perspective on how open markets and AI platforms enable innovation velocity, especially in emerging markets. And last but not the least, Jibu. Jibu is a fellow of Mozilla Foundation. He brings a global open internet and digital rights perspective from Mozilla Foundation. His work centers on openness, transparency, and ensuring AI ecosystem that remain accountable. So that's the introduction. That's an amazing stellar panel full of experience. I will now move to the questions. Before I actually start asking questions, let me just share that as UNDP, what we do is bridge the gap between people and policies. So my questions are more as learners. So we are all as learners going to be asking questions to our experts. So the first question is a generic question that all my fellow panelists will be actually asking from their respective perspectives, because we have a diverse panel. So we are all learners here. So Pradeep, for you first, help us learn from your respective experiences, from where you sit in infrastructure, in governance, in startup innovation, in agriculture, digital rights. Could you share your key insights, if you were to share in 4 minutes, your key insights on OpenAI platforms?
Yeah, okay. So OpenAI, again, right? Not OpenAI. This is sometimes very confusing. And before the panel, when we were having a little bit conversation, we were talking about that. So as the, AI is becoming a foundation of, think of the basic building block and the infrastructure every country will need. Think of the way you think about the electricity, you think about the roads, you think about the bridges, you're thinking about the ports and airports, like seaports and the airports. AI will become that fundamental infrastructure which every country will need. Now, to go and build that AI, which is safe, reliable, you can rely your culture, your own data, your own economy on that. Being it open is super critical. And there are also other reasons, right? If you keep the systems closed, you cannot really drive the innovation. You cannot drive the ease of access to these latest and greatest happening in the technology. So the entire world, on the one hand, you will see the word, there is a lot of frontier model developers. I don't need to say the names of them, but you are very well familiar. It's not that we don't need frontier models. There are very specific use cases where these models will do pretty well. But on the other hand, there are also a lot of open source models. If you see in the last 2 to 3 years, right, with Llama, which came from Meta, that was like open source. Then after that, we have a lot of models came like DeepSeek and like Kiwi, and then all these models which are coming, which are becoming open source. And the gap between the frontier models and the open source models is kind of getting closed if you see. What we, even at NVIDIA, because we also believe completely in open source, we have come up what we call as a Nemotron. Nemotron is open source models. But very important thing, when anyone talks to you about open source or OpenAI platform, it's very important. It's not just about the models. You need to have, along with the models, hey, what are the tools which has been used to pre-train or fine-tune those models? You need to have access to the data on which your model was trained. A lot of people talk about, in the morning when I was giving the session, a lot of people talk about the responsible and ethical AI. So you really need to have access to the data on which your model was trained. You also need to have access to the recipes which has been used to build those models. So as a part of the Nemotron, the initiative, as I was talking earlier, what we have done, we create the open models, like we have a Nemotron Nano, right? And like, Super, like multiple of these models available. But we also open source the entire data sources. We also open source all the tools and the recipes which anyone can go and build on top of that. And finally, the last point which I will say, it's super important that you drive the innovation while keeping these things in the open source. You can invite the entire community, because the best part of like being open, you're not restricted to the talent pool you have access to. Now you can go and talk to anyone, like anyone can come and contribute to your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pradeep. So while you were talking, I was making notes on making sure that I'll go do my research on Nemotron and see how it can, it can help all of us. Tanvi, what about you? What perspective do you think, you get to OpenAI platforms?
So I'll just quickly introduce the foundation that I come from. People Plus AI is an initiative of the Step Foundation, which has been around for about 10 years. This was co-founded by Nandan and Rohini Nilikani and Shankar Maruvara. This is the team that has been instrumental in creating the DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure Stack of Aadhaar, UPI, and many more in the education space. So our work at the foundation is all about creating open shared rails. In fact, this is in the mandate of the foundation. Anything that we create has to be in the open source. For all the reasons that Pradeep mentioned, which is we want to grow it, we need all the talent to constantly improve it, and secondly, it should be benefiting people. So when it comes to AI, the focus of the initiative and our work is, there's a lot of emphasis on foundational innovation capacity. So obviously you need things like compute, the right data systems, the right models to create the technology. But that just creates the technology layer. For that technology to have impact, it needs now diffusion capacity, which should also be open and shared. And what do I mean by that, right? A very simple example. We do a lot of work in the space of agriculture. We have 3 implementations that we have partnered in the last 7 months. The first one was called Mahavistar, which has been launched jointly with 20 plus organizations. So here openness such that 20, 50, 100 organizations can come together to make sure that that innovation translates into adoption and impact. So Mahavistar is a project where they have worked not only with the best local compute data model providers, they have worked closely with the India AI mission for compute. They have worked closely with AI for Bharat, which has the best ASR and TTS models today, which are relevant to the Indian context, but they need to get applied. So again, till you apply the open rails, the open AI platforms, it will not translate into impact. So one thing is, how do you include voice and multilinguality, which is a key sort of pillar, I would say, for anything to have impact in India, right? And number two is, how do you think about safety and benchmarks? Because again, platforms will not translate into impact if you are not able to gain trust of the people, the end beneficiary, the farmer, the frontline worker, but also institutions who have to stand behind an answer. So in Mahavisar, for example, this is not a B2C solution that's just being given to the farmers. It's being done through the Department of Agriculture and the state of Maharashtra. So it's very important that the department firstly is incentivized implementing the solution so that people who are getting the answer trust it, number one. But secondly, as we are learning, as that adoption journey is on, we realized benchmarks, evals are very important, not just for our use case, but if we create it for agriculture in India, that could become an open shared rail for others. So that in itself, evaluations and benchmarks, which again is a collaborative activity. We are not experts in anything to just do it alone. So openness means collaboration across civil society, tech, government, and all the other bodies. The third thing I do want to mention is that, see, openness is all about repeatability. We, each one of us, you could be a builder, you could be a student, you could be a policy person. You don't need to reinvent everything for your use case. You should not be. And we already have some examples, Bhashni, AI for Bharat, many of these, right? Openness is all about repeatability. Can you create, contribute, identify what are the common components you need to have impact, for your use case to have impact? And then either bring the funder's attention to focus on that, or potentially through your use case, whatever learning you have had, contribute to building that component, right? We will only grow if the ecosystem learns from each other. So for us, open AI platforms are firstly focused on creating impact. And secondly, that only happens when you introduce a theme of repeatability in these platforms.
Thank you so much, Tanvi. And that's actually, perfectly said as a practitioner who can actually speak from, from various stakeholders' perspective. Vineet, you have some amazing, stories to share with your experience working with millions of farmers in India. Please share your perspective and experience with our audience.
Sure. I think just to introduce, I'm CTO at Digital Green. Digital Green's flagship product, Farmer Chat, which we launched 2 years back as just a bot on a messenger platform. Now, 1.5 years back as an app, standalone on Android. Just 2 weeks back, we got a millionth download, and we have catered to around 10 million farmer queries across India and North Africa for smallholder farmers. And basically, a farmer can ask a question in multilingual, multimodal, multi-turn conversations. When I think about open AI platform and the way we look at it is, I think we need to look at it at 3 layers. The first part is the data set itself. As I think Pradeep has mentioned, that the models are already pre-trained. In fact, the full form of GPT is generative pre-trained, right? So it has already been pre-trained, but that doesn't mean that it knows everything. And when we are looking at very domain-specific stuff, there's still errors. So for example, what we see from ground, when a farmer asks, and I hope there are a lot of Hindi-speaking people here, but a farmer asks about a question about gehu. Gehu is wheat. And gehu sounds like gaon, which is village. So what's the problem with my wheat crop becomes what's the problem with my village? The answer would be totally be different. Same way, there is a word called ropai, which I didn't know. It is about transplanting. It becomes rokna, to stop. And these are the errors that happen. And the foundational models that are there may not have enough amount of data to have been pre-trained on this. So I think those data sets, and then the second is the evaluation, the kind of errors that are having. So if I have the open data set, then I have the open evaluation, and then I think the open models can become and be fine-tuned on top of it way more. We have the resources. There are many kinds of you have the GPU credits, and there are so many innovators. And we had partnered with a company in Ethiopia. They had trained on Amharic and Oromo, which are very low resource language. They got the data and they have trained open source model, and it performs exceedingly well on the voice. Their text to speech is almost, it sounds like very realistic. And this is coming with a 6 team people out of Addis. This is the kind of innovation that we are seeing, that we are also able to do, and we can see others who have access to those kind of data sets. And there are a lot of such initiatives. I think NVIDIA Inception program is one of the, with the Nematron, is one of the places where you can get a lot of these, the resources. So I think those 3 layers are extremely important in terms of publishing those open data sets, leveraging that, the evaluation framework results, and then the open model. I think fine-tuning or those LoRa transformers is something that the innovators will be able to come up with the solutions.
Thank you so much. This is impressive, and I can tell you, as as the regional person with UNDP, when we speak of supporting multiple countries, they all keep coming back to how did you manage that in India? What kind of scale? And the beauty of doing anything in India is you can very quickly scale if things start working, and then we become a good template for the global south. So this is the best part of being Indian. So I don't know, and good that we are like almost everyone Indian on the panel, so can be very proud about that. And speaking of that, maybe Shravan, since Avatar AI is part of the India AI mission to build the unified AI interface. It's the AI of DPI that literally can be called it as. Could you share more about Avatar AI and how you see this open AI platform's perspective?
Yep. To start with, tough to follow them, and we are partnered with the XStep Foundation, and a lot to learn from the good work that we've done in UPI and Aadhaar. So this is just one more step forward, but. Avatar has been given a grant by the government of India as part of the India AI mission to build, as Afreen said, a trust protocol layer called Unified AI Interface. The intention is to start connecting all the dots from models to data to compute. You've heard some interesting observations on those aspects, but there's still a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of trust, delegation of authority. How do you do that and facilitate accelerating adoption of great work that teams like Digital Green are doing? And what we're literally trying to do is be that middleware layer which can just accelerate that adoption curve. The net objective comes back to what our Honorable Prime Minister has given us as a collective mission statement, which is how do we get to Viksit Bharat in 2047? Working backwards from that, the India AI mission has a target of how do we unlock $1 trillion GDP, leveraging AI by 2035? And in that mission, we are trying to be that horizontal partner with the platform proposition at the trust and the discovery layer. We've commercially been working with the US large enterprises. We've raised about 55 million. Sequoia led our Series A, Sequoia and Tiger led our Series B. So we're bringing a lot of the large-scale enterprise adoption learnings over the last decade. It's 11th year now. Feels like ages, trust me. Feel like a dinosaur, but those 10 years of compounded learning is something that we're trying to contribute in a social good mindset towards an open platform that each one of you owns, that hopefully gives a productivity unlock for every citizen, not just about productivity, but in fact, hopefully improving the lives of citizens. All the MSMEs that may not be able to afford the large 1.8 trillion parameter models, bring the cost down such that even a farmer can, like in the Digital Green case, can actually afford it, hopefully on the edge if we could achieve that in the next couple of years. And the last would be the governance initiatives, right? There's a lot of efficiency that AI can unlock in a lot of government initiatives that happen today. But that's the broader focus that we I have no timer, so I don't know if I'm beyond 4 minutes. I'll stop
I was
there.
just about to say my panel is doing brilliant on timing. So everyone in the audience, please keep your questions ready because I'm not going to come back to you towards the end. We'll see how much we can do, but we'll also come to you after the first round. So we are just getting a bit lucky. So thank you, panelists, for keeping up to time. So Jibu, tell us about your perspectives from the Mozilla Foundation.
Yeah, I'm very privileged here to represent Mozilla, an organization that has stood for openness for decades, right? Mozilla has been one of the pioneers in ensuring we have an open internet. And now with multiple initiatives, I don't know, I know you have heard about Bhashini and AI for Bharat. I'm just asking how many of you heard about Common Voice, Mozilla Common Voice? It's an open source data platform aimed to mitigate bias and democratize speech technology for all. And similarly, we recently launched a Mozilla Data Collective as well. So Mozilla AI is another entity as well. So for time and time again, Mozilla has been one of the pioneers when it comes to ensuring technology is free, open, and transparent and beneficial for everyone. But I want to take a step back here, and when I heard this topic, I did some little bit of analytical work, and I feel, thanks to previous speakers, I have a little extra time. It seems like, so I wanted to assess what we discuss as open AI, not open AI, open AI platforms in 3 layers, right? So first layer, you have something like the open model ecosystem. And a good example will be, the Falcon language model built by UAE or the Swiss model like Apertures, right? So these models have actually, what they have done is they have reduced the barrier, the adoption barrier, and they have been very crucial in building a domestic ecosystem around this. Now, the second layer of OpenAI ecosystem is the open infrastructure and public platforms. So we have seen this with the French platform called Albert, which is like an AI assistant for the French bureaucrats, which essentially connects with other departments and data sources as well. And similarly, the third part comes is the scientific research community, right? Open research and collaboration community. And there are these platforms like Mona and Maya, which is MIAI, which stands for collaborative clinical research, and the other previous one stands for research collaboration on imaging, medical imaging as well. So these are the 3 layers, and these platforms has been very critical in promoting innovation and scientific research as well. Now, I looked at what works when it comes to open AI platforms and what doesn't work. So what is working for these platforms? They reduce, like I said, dependency on big tech, that what we mentioned before, and they largely enable local adoption, and they improve public service delivery, which is very important, and they develop innovation in ecosystem as well. But these are not without challenges, right? Things like how the whole compute infrastructure remain concentrated, right? And the whole question of funding, sustainability also leads to a lot of challenges. And importantly, the governance aspect of open AI platforms are still in an immature phase. And importantly, it's in a fragmented space. So I think I will leave it for the next round.
Thank you so much. Quickly going to the audience, we have 2 questions that we can take. I think you raised it first. I think there are many hands, but let me give it to you first. Someone can pass on the mic, please. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Afreen, and thank you all the panelists for such wonderful remarks. What I wanted to ask was, as like these OpenAI tools become almost digital public goods, what sort of governance and technical design choices can we make to ensure that they also remain institutionally accessible to multiple state actors across, because we have a federal structure, right? So I don't think this conversation stops at just technical openness. it's also a question of institutional accessibility where we should be able to give access to people across the federal structure, like I mentioned. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear what the panel has to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, let me start. So, for example, anything which is like open, that does not mean that, being open, but also being very efficient, being like, improving the quality and the accuracy, everything is super important, right? So, like, for example, in like Hugging Faces, if you see the amount of the models being uploaded every year, there is a lot of benchmarks which are being run. And on these benchmarks, we test in terms of which are the models which are pushing the limits, which are the models which has like, safeguarding in place, which are the models which has a secure, because when you're building on the open source AI, it means the AI or that open source should be good enough for you to build on top of it, right? For example, like just at NVIDIA, we uploaded like last year, we were the biggest contributors in Hugging Face, and we had like 650 models and 250 data sets which we uploaded to the Hugging Face, right? But the job does not end there. You have to run through all of these models and all the data sets through the right benchmarks so that the entire world can see the quality of that openness which you are bringing in that ecosystem. So that's super important, right? Second thing which I will also mention, taking the open source and you want to build something on top of that, think of you still would like to sandboxing that into your environment. You would like to ensure that you are checking all the vulnerabilities which may be available in that software, right? Think of, you may write another AI to do that, you may write agents to do that, but it's an essential the responsibility of the people who are building on the top of open source, right? If you see like last couple of weeks, there has been so many open source, the tools is being available, and you must have heard of all the security dilemmas, right, which people are talking about. But very important thing, you take that, you do your own sandboxing. Before you give access, you can write a smaller CLI to give access to your data to that tool, and all of a sudden you're exposed. But think of it's a responsibility of that individual or that enterprise or that business who's building on the open source, but also the responsibility of the people who are contributing in that environment so that the richness and the fairness, openness also comes with the quality, accuracy, and then, everything goodness which you can expect. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Anyone want to share more?
Add to that?
Yeah, can we get bilateral? We can give one more question a chance if possible. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Anushka from... Is it working now? Hi, I'm Anushka. I'm from IMT Ghaziabad. I'm doing my MBA and I've worked in WPP transformational projects. My question is basically that any of these models require data, whether it's open source or these big companies that are there. So data becomes the currency. The end user or the user which is fitting into the data, they are ultimately going to be charged a premium. I mean, not on the open source definitely, but otherwise. So how do we work on the revenue model of such things, and how can we empower the users, because all the data now is going to be on these platforms for them to train and probably come back and take away the jobs or otherwise.
Just to kick it off, the answering. So I'm combining the question what the gentleman previously asked. So one of the important components that will make open AI platforms for public good, I wanted to stress the public goods aspect here, is that how the government is able to share data responsibly, right? And one good example, I think Tanvi, we were talking before, is IUDX, which was a pilot project, came out of IISc, Indian Institute of Science, and the Ministry for Urban Affairs a few years back, which was a data exchange. So I think it was implemented in India in many cities as a smart city project. I think some of the cities like Pune, if I'm correct. What they did was they had this exchange pipeline where data from multiple government entities, government department and government infrastructures go through each other, and the exchange's role is to make sure they are interoperable and they are, as you said, properly rewarded or proper that incentivized. So that's one option for the question you said. Again, specifying from a public goods point of view.
So just to add to that, right, to your first question, I think it happens, irrespective of open source or not, there is a lot of education and institutional capacity that needs to get built out it's beyond just the technical team creating the solution, right? So for example, what we have seen in large scale implementations, let's say you're working with a government department, and ultimately that government department is implementing that solution for a farmer or a frontline worker, whatever it is. The core here is that they have to trust the system. There has to be accountability. So it's really, in my mind, it's not about open source or not. A lot of time has to be spent, and it's a journey. It's not a one-time switch that you switch on and you expect the other side to sort of accept it and adopt it, right? The difference between a pilot and a production-grade adoption to happen is that it has to stop being a side window that worked in the demo and then people said, okay, this is good enough. Like I can say I'm AI enriched, but I'm not applying it every day. So institutional capacity has to be at the center, which includes education, awareness, doing sessions where people become comfortable with technology. How do you do risk management? Let's say if something goes wrong, how do you deal with the cons that could emerge from an implementation? And to your point around data, you're absolutely right. And what I think is that there's a huge focus that I think is happening across tech, government, civil society, multilaterals, where they're focusing on AI-ready data systems. So I'll give you an example. Very recently, I think it was last week, that the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MASPI, has actually created an MCP server for the e-Sankhya portal, and they have put some of their statistical data sets. This is a ministry that creates the GDP for the country. They have been so AI-enabled, AI-forward, because they realize that they are sitting on this great corpus of data which is constantly enriched. Like they're the ones who are going and doing household surveys. How do we make this data available for others? And they have actively set up a mechanism where people can access this data. So we are already seeing some of these examples come up, but you are absolutely right. For this data economy to become circular, for it to get started, you'll have to think of mechanisms and potentially DPI, which could help them.
Yeah, so there is one company, sorry, I don't remember, it started in India, and that's to exactly answer your question, which basically, it's a more of a profit sharing model, where they kind of crowdsourcing all the data, like from your mobile. I think they were doing with all the, people living below the poverty line here, and hey, if you go and record this and send it to me, you will be paid like this many, rupees per minute, or, and then they were selling that data to the companies who were needing that data for the model. So there's a different kind of the mechanism which exists. Some people will have it like more open source, freely available, but this data economy where you can do the crowdsourcing and everyone can be paid for the amount of the data, they are giving back to these open model builders.
You want to? 1 minute. Yeah.
Just adding on to what Tanvi said, and also Pradeep, on we had in one of the project we specifically tied up this not-for-profit organization called Karya, and one of the stuff that they work with is the frontline workers in healthcare, and exactly the same model for each voice note that is there, they get paid. Now there are such interesting models that are coming. It also ties to the governance, but I think it has to be looked not in terms of revenue but rather the incentive of the overall system. The whole idea of open system is that if I'm creating an open public infrastructure, before DPI, I should think about physical public infrastructure like a park. Are we maintaining it well as a society, right? So the first question is on the society and not the government first. As a society, as the stakeholder, multiple stakeholders, we need to understand that each of us have got something to benefit by maintaining this infrastructure or good in the first place, right? I should not be littering. I should not be throwing a garbage data in. I'll get a garbage model out.
Thank you, Vineet. So, thank you so much. The question and answer round got the discussion more rich in terms of insights, because this keeps coming back to it's not yours, it's not his, it's not hers, it's ours. So it's collective. So that came out so clearly. Let's do a round two of our questions. So how many of you have actually read and felt the 7 chakras of the India AI mission? Yeah. Let me revise that for you. You'd see on your apps on the India AI mission. So, and I loved it. So that's the reason why I selfishly put that question here for our panelists. So the 7 chakras of the India AI mission is, the first one is human capital, inclusion, trust, resilience, science and innovation, resources, and social good. Can you think of anything beyond the principles? It almost has everything that we can think of and that we can work on. So my question to my panelists, so if OpenAI platforms are to operationalize the democratizing AI resources, which one chakra do you think would move the first for you? Pradeep.
Okay. I do have. Okay, so.
And you have 2 minutes to answer the question.
Okay, thank you for the timer. So all the 7 chakras are super important, but one thing which I'm personally super passionate about, the human capital, right? Because when we're talking about the open AI systems, it's also super important that we upskilling all the people who will be part of that open ecosystem, right? If we don't do that, you kind of think of you're leaving the people behind, right? And the second important part of that, with this word where, it's not like knowledge is just being confined in one space. Everything today is available. You can go on the YouTube and you almost learn latest and greatest everything which is available in AI today, right? But there is another aspect. Right now, a lot of this information is available in very specific languages. How do you go and think about localization of this, the educational content to your human capital? I know in India we have many languages and many dialects we speak across the country. Not everyone, many of us knows English pretty well, but still, can we also make this, let's say if you want to go and teach your mom or your grandmom about AI and they don't know English, you can't teach them English. But what about everything is available, at least some basic things for them to learn in their local language? That may be Hindi or, Punjabi, Gujarati, Tamil, right? Whatever the language you are coming from. Another aspect is, AI is not just, a lot of people confuse, hey, we just need to think about how we go and build. There is also a lot of education needed in terms of enabling this human capital on how to best utilize all the tools and the resources. Just think about the prompt engineering. If you just try Gemini or ChatGPT, with the change of the prompt, the amount of the responses, the kind of the responses you get are very, very different. You will find a lot of prompt engineering courses, right? So it's important, think of the people, most of the people who will be the users of AI, rather than they are the creators of AI. So how do we go and even enable those people? I will say AI native, okay? Where even your moms can go and your dads and moms can go and then use these tools to bring the quality and then efficiency in their day-to-day life.
Thank you.
I hope I'm within 2 minutes.
No, you're not, but thank you so much, Pradeep. Thank you so much, Tanvi. Over to you.
So for me, it's 2 chakras actually. The first one is trust. Because anything which is open means, or at least hints at the fact that you can give back, you can give feedback to it. You understand what are the basics that create that platform. Trust also means there's some amount of accountability, so which I think is a double-edged sword, because in the case of open platforms, sometimes there is no one throat to choke, to put it bluntly, but it also means that you can contribute and potentially make it better and ask at least the questions, because that's what they are meant for. So trust is a big one, and trust, again, like Pradeep said, not just on the building side, on the tech side, but trust on the adoption side, because now you can ask the questions and hopefully there's some answer at the other end that you could get. The second chakra is democratizing resources. I'll give you an example very quickly. For the Mahavistar implementation, that took 9 months and it got launched in May 2025. But there was so much know-how created from that implementation that when they took that implementation to Ethiopia, it took only 3 months to get it rolling. This is not just the technology layer, voice telephony application getting developed, the entire thing getting rolled out. And then, I think last week or on Monday of this week, it was rolled out in Gujarat for 36 million dairy farmers. And that, how long do you think the Amul implementation took? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks from start to finish to roll out. So there is so much openness because the know-how is packaged. It's a platform, right? Know-how is a platform in a way. So the fact that you can actually start using this know-how and start deploying faster, creating impact faster for me personally, it's been great because I consider this know-how to be an open AI resource, right? Which helps many, many more use case owners.
Thank you, Tanvi. So to my rest of the 3 panelists, 2 minutes.
You're trying.
Sure. So I think, it's difficult to choose one, but I would say personally, which is close to our heart at Digital Green, is inclusion. And one of the things when we started, I think in 2008-9, the study showed that cost of adoption of a practice in India for a smallholder farmer was $35. Like that's a cost for the government to promote, organize everything. There's a, if one practice has to be adopted. With our work on the video and everything, then it came down to, by 10x. I think the cost can significantly come down. What we are seeing right now for some of the languages like Hindi, where the model is performing quite good, we are seeing like 0.6 cents in US dollars, not in India, per query, per text query. That's amazingly low. So, and if a farmer is able to, what we are also seeing is that a farmer, per farmer, they are asking, let's say, 10 questions per month, and 70% of them are adopting. So the cost of adoption then goes down. I think that gives a real agency and inclusion. And I think trust is going to be very, very important. And I would just say that for trust, the model as well as the entire application has to incorporate with inclusion the kind of, it's not one shot that you can get an answer right. In fact, AI can make mistake is an asterisk that will be there forever. Even it is true for people, but it should allow people to give a feedback and create a multi-turn kind of a conversational scenario. That is, I think, something that is still evolving. And that is, I think, the key to create more trusted systems.
Thank you so much, Vineet. Shavant.
How many minutes? I would probably go with trust at the risk of being monotonous here, because I actually think that I agree with Tanvi's point on accountability being probably the first principle. But if I had to take a step back, I think from a first principle thinking perspective, we have to apply a buy India, for India principle. And from that would come accountability, safety, ethicality, those kind of aspects. Equally, I would say that given we are building a DPI as part of the India mission, the government shouldn't get into surveillance. It should be more about facilitating. There shouldn't be any traceability of data. Otherwise, to your question earlier, the private-public partnerships wouldn't take off. And the success that Tanvi and teams have done at XStep with UPI has worked with almost 85% penetration today. Congrats on that. But that's worked because they've made that a pillar stone of every architectural decision and every tactical decision in terms of adoption, right? And that's when it works. I do think it's tough to pick one, honestly, Afreen. I think all 7 chakras have their own standing and with their own right. But I would probably pick trust. And the third one, so maybe trust is winning the table here.
Trust is winning the day. Jibu.
So it's a very difficult task being the fifth speaker with the 7 chakras. So originally,
You don't have
I
the
said
veto.
my pick was trust, but the previous speakers has explained it quite well. So I'm gonna pick inclusion here because that focuses more on our work here in India. But I want to give a quick note on the trust factor as well. So openness doesn't always translate into trustworthiness, right? So trustworthiness only happens when these systems are, properly contested, audited, and governed with the public interest. And I'm going to be very candid here. Many of the pilot programs we have seen deployed in certain states and certain private sector projects we have been celebrated haven't even undergone any kind of auditing. So it's all the claims. Hasn't undergone any kind of auditing to check whether those claims are verifiable. And I have seen misalignment between many of this, what they claim to be and what is happening on the ground. So my work is mostly focused on grassroots, what we are doing. So what we are doing with the Responsible Computing Challenge in India, Mozilla, is we are trying to build capacity for responsible AI in universities and in public systems. And one of our major focus is how we can address the digital divide that is generated by AI. And we ask this question, who are we building these tools for, right? These tools can be only accessed by people who have fast internet and smartphones, which is still 30% of India's population, right? So larger work we've been doing. So how do we ensure that those who are left behind will be also a part of this conversation, will also be beneficial of this larger technology? Then only we can confidently speak about public goods or commons. So we've been working with the universities like NIT Warangal in providing AI literacy training for tribal self-help women's group. We have reached out to almost 7,000 women, and it was awarded one of the UN women yesterday. It was one of the things for part of the compendium as well. Similarly, in another project, we have built something called WebBees, a student project, which can convert any website into accessibility-friendly websites. And it's been deployed across 84 websites in the world, and with almost 1 million users. So we believe how, the larger good, how much we can talk about all these chakras, it only matters if it can reach to the poorest of the poor and the marginalized of the community. Otherwise, it's just another thing that remains on the paper.
Thank you so much, Jibu. Thank you so much. Do we have time for questions? Do we? Our minute minder will tell us if we do. No? Okay, let's do one golden question. Okay, give it to you. You have to keep it short, and maybe you can check which panelists you want to target it to.
Hi, I'm Dhruv Sehgal, and I'm 22 years old. I'm a founder, a startup founder. So I wanted to ask, what kind of startups would survive after everyone has their hands on the most powerful models?
Ooh, difficult question. I'm sure everyone is tempted to answer. Let's do one word each. Pradeep.
Sorry,
What kind of startup?
Sorry, what was the question? I couldn't get your last line.
I'm saying, what kind of startups would survive after everyone has their hands on the most powerful models?
So, it's always, I will say, the creativity is always like super important. It's not about how do you go and build the things moving forward, because building part is easy now with everything happening with AI, but creativity is still relies with all of us. I want to be very short. Pass on.
To me, it's basically any startup that creates impact. And impact is not usage metrics. But if you're ultimately able to create income, increase productivity, something very tangible for, let's say, large volumes of people, ultimately that will survive.
Yeah, I concur with Tanvi here totally. I think the business will remain on the fundamentals. If you are making something which is actually usable, likable by your consumers, you would survive. I think the survival rate of the startups is already very low. So you are in a very difficult zone already. I think a lot of more entrepreneurs will come up because there are way too many applications that can be built.
Yeah, I think human ingenuity is greater than what we underestimated too. So I don't think it's on threat. Having said that, just to add to what people have been saying, I would say distribution would be more important. IP would probably lose its significance 10 years down the line.
Jibu,
Yes.
one word.
Yes. So access to the technology doesn't always translate to good products because it depends on who it has access. And as somebody who is in an editorial board of a journal, I have been getting so many article submissions which are absolute slops, AI slops. So it depends on who has access to those technology.
Thank you so much. So the success of this panel lies in the final question that is asked by a 22-year-old young startup entrepreneur. So we literally can clearly see across not just the panel but also in the room that if India is leapfrogging towards making AI as public good, we are not just doing it for the 1.4 billion people in India, but we are setting a powerful template for the global south. So 3 cheers for the India AI mission. Thank you so much. And please don't feel disappointed if you've not been able to ask questions because the word open was used almost 10,000 times on this panel. We are all very open to be connecting and keeping in touch with you. If you think you'd like to collaborate with us, please feel free to add us on LinkedIn and we'll be very happy to collaborate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Afrin, for moderating this session. Also, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your valuable, insightful thoughts. This is the small moment of appreciation for you all from India AI.